and welcome to this, my January reading wrap-up, my book haul, and what I am going to be reading in the month of love. Let's get into it. And I have my trusty journal to help me through it. So if you've seen this in, I think it was my Illumicrate wrap-up, if you haven't seen that, go check it out. But you can list all of the books that you're reading, book of the month, reading goals, monthly TBR, what you read, etc., what you bought, a reading log just like this. Now, the things I wanted to read in January were The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Crusoe, An Insidious Inheritance by Amelie West, This Thing Is Starving by Isabel Aislinn. I wanted to finish Night Shift by Stephen King, January's by Olivia Blake, and Venomborn by Benjamin Verin. Now, my first book of the year was The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Crusoe, and this is a book of fantasy, time travel. You go down different echoes, there's a clock, and there's time travel, there's echoes, there's fae, there's gods, there's bantering characters, there's time resetting as well as time travel, and it is all to do with this clock, and the clock is ticking. You can find my full review of any of these books that I've read this month down in the description, but this, I think it's I really enjoyed this, and I'm going to be looking for the sequel coming out this November, and I gave this book 5 stars. I read it over New Year's, perfect time to read it. Now, the next book I read was an arc called An Insidious Inheritance by Amelie West, and this is I wouldn't say it's a horror, it's more like a ghost story. It's a good ghost story. I give it 3 stars. It's a very creepy setting. I just felt it could have been a bit more, it could have leaned more into the horror aspect. It didn't go far enough for me, but then I am a depraved individual, and it was a good ghost story. Next up was January's by Olivia Blake, and I had to read it in January simply because, the title is January's, I couldn't really read it any other month. But this is a short story collection of 15 stories, which were, I think there was maybe 5 standout ones, and the other ones were a bit blah. What annoyed me with this book was the finding out afterwards that at least over half of the stories in this have already been published in her other short story books. Most of it's a rehash. So next up was another arc called This Thing Is Starving by Isabel Aislinn, and this is a horror, and it's a haunted house horror told from the perspective of the house, which is completely unique, and it deals with some incredibly heavy feminist topics. Think as much abuse and trauma as you can think of happens within these walls at some point. I think anybody for a love of horror should read this, but take care of the trigger warnings. And next up we had an arc that I had been coveting and I couldn't wait to read it, and that being Venomborn by Benjamin Verin. And this is the first in a brand new epic fantasy series, and if I start talking about this, I am just going to gush for hours, which I ended up doing in my review, which you can find in the comments if you haven't already read it. It takes place, these Venomborn have venom in their veins, and it causes them to have powers, but the education of these powers and of these creatures and monsters that roam the land has been lost to time, so they have to find out sort of by practice. And there's this fleet of invaders on the horizon, and only the Venomborn can stop them, except there's only 2 of them, and they don't know how to find the others, and they don't know how to use their powers, and it's sort of a trial and error thing, and the stakes are just getting higher. And see, I'm getting more animated the more I talk about it, so I'm gonna have to stop because I will talk about it for hours. Please go watch that video. And next up we had because one of my goals is to read the subscription box books. So in January, I had a book from the Butterfly Book Box, which is Living Legend, which I'm doing with the read-along in February. And we had Illumicrate brought us Watermoon, which I'm reading at the minute, and it brought us an Evernight box called Bat Eater. And this was supposed to be a horror, modern setting, ghosts, demons, gore, which I don't mind any of all three. And I started reading it, I was like, that is crap. And I ended up DNFing it because the characters were so annoying and repetitive and so up themselves and inside their own head. It was a chore to read them, and they're the only point of view we get. So absolutely not. She's a horrible character. I hated the story. It was so predictable, and I ended up chucking the book on eBay and it sold within days. But then any book that came after a beloved 5-star Venomborn arc was not going to do as well as it probably could have done, but that was atrocious. And that was all I read in January. 6 books, if you count the DNF. If you don't, I got 5. Now, I saw online, somebody said, I was watching, like, I was doom scrolling through TikTok, and it came up, and then, I read 31 books in January. How? How can somebody read that many books? I have a full-time job, and I struggle to read the 5 or 6 that I do. Unless you're reading paragraph books that are about this big and about this thick. How are you reading 31 books a month? But where do you find the time? 31 books is just mind-blowing. Now let's get on to books I bought. So I bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. I bought 12 books this month. Not including the subscription boxes. And yes, I know, I probably have a problem. But Waterstones had a point sale. And you say sale to me, and I have to go and have a look. And if I have a look, I tend to find things. So one of the things I wanted to do this year is the series that have been on my TBR for like 6 months. I want to buy the first book to see if it's a series that belongs on my TBR, because if I don't like the first book, then the series has absolutely no business being on any of my lists, because I'm not going to read them. Now, I bought No Land for Heroes by Cal Black. I have read one of his short stories before because it was in the Advent of Winter Kickstarter one. And this sounded really interesting. It's a Wild West meets fantasy. It's not the cover I ordered. This does not look like the book I ordered. The book I ordered was sort of a dark black with I'm sure it had a train on the front of it. Or maybe that's the next one. I'd have to have a look. I'll put it up there if it's supposed to be this, then I was a bit annoyed, but I couldn't really remember. This is a series that I've heard about on YouTube, and people love it, and I already like his writing because his short story was my favourite in the entire collection of the Advent of Winter. So this one I will look forward to getting into. One of the next books I picked up was Samuel Pepys mystery, The Brampton Witch Murders by Ellis Blackwood. Just because it sounded such fun. It came up on, you may like, and yes, I might like. But this is Samuel Pepys, the figure in history, was the guy that wrote the diaries around the 1600s and dealing with the Great Fire of London at that point. Now in this, it's his sister is accused of witchcraft in the village she lives in. He has to go and get a band together and try and get rid of all these claims, and then murders start popping up everywhere and it's blamed on witchcraft, and it's supposed to be very good. It's supposed to be very fun too. And it sounded like fun. And it's only, how many pages is it? It's about 230 pages, so it's not that big. And I thought it would be fun. It sounded fun to me. It might be a fun ride. Now, next up is a book called From Tormented Tides by Val E. Lane. And with the books that I am so interested in this year, the books that I seem to be gravitating towards are to do with the sea, pirates, ocean creatures, but mostly pirates out on the waves. So this has been on my TBR for, I would say, over a year that I've wanted this. And it is the first book in a And it is the first book in a series, and I wanted to see what it was all about. So, I mean, according to the blurb, the main character, she meets a charming guy at a college party, and this guy died 300 years ago at sea. And then a few of his friends start showing up and things start going awry. There's curses and cursed captains, and I think Pirates of the Caribbean meets actual demons in a modern college setting on the sea. And the cover is just sick. I love the cover. So I can't wait to get into that, because Pirates, it seems, is all I want to read. Which takes me into my next book that I picked up, Sea of Souls by N.C. Scrimgeour. And I've wanted this book ever since I saw the artwork for it. I wasn't planning to read this until March or like April time. But the second book in the series came up in one of the Discords as like an ARC sign up. So I thought, you don't ask, you don't get. So I thought I'll sign up for that. I don't expect to get it. And I really didn't expect to get it. So when it landed in my email box, I was like, I probably should read the first one. Because the second one, which I'll put a picture of up here, comes out in March. So this goes on my February TBR quite high up the list, because I have to read this before I read that. And the cover art for this and that is just everything I want this year. And I just hope it holds up its end of the bargain, or I will be so disappointed. So next up we have Queen of Deception. Now, at the point of recording this, I have already read it in February. Because what date is it today? It's the 4th I'm recording this on. I have already read this, and my thoughts will be coming soon. But I loved the cover. It's an indie author. The whole premise is that our main character, Amelia, dies in our world and is reborn in the world of her favourite fantasy novel. But she isn't the main character, she's a side character, but she knows the main plot and she knows the characters in it. And her side character is supposed to die right at the beginning, and she manages to try to alter it, because of course she doesn't want to die again. And it turns into a whole saga, and this is the first book in that saga, and I just loved the cover art. What are people doing to these cover art? Indie author cover art is just so much better than some of the normal ones. And another book that's been on my want to read and try out series pile has been A Curse of Shadows and Thorns by L.J. Andrews. Now, most books are a curse of this or that, or a court of this or that, or for recent years. But I liked this because I like the cover. It has gambling dens and a plucky female main character, a roguish fae male character, and there's coups in a kingdom, and she participates in this coup against this guy, and she ends up wanting the throne, and she ends up running away, and this guy goes with her, and just it's a whole thing. Apparently it's supposed to be quite good, so I want to try that one out too. And then I got an email through that the Folio Society were having a January sale, so of course I had to go check it out, because I won Northanger Abbey in the Folio Society Golden Edition as a free book when I ordered something else. You got in this draw that you could win a free book, and this was the free book I got. So when the Folio Society had a sale on in January, I had to partake. And I am weak because I ended up partaking twice. And for my Jane Austen series, I had to get Sense and Sensibility, and I had to get Pride and Prejudice, because I want the full set, the full 6. So I only have 3 more to go, and they are quite expensive when they're not on sale, so if I get an email saying that they're not going to be doing these versions anymore, you better know that I am going to hop, skip and jump to buy the last 3 just so my series matches. Because I can't have a series that doesn't match. And I thought that that was my buying over. But I was browsing on Waterstones, always a dangerous prospect, and some pre-order releases showed up when I was on a phone call with my friend, and one of them was Hecate by Nikita Gill. I had to have a look at my notes then because I couldn't remember. But this edition, I mean, it's Greek myth. I'm already in. It's a special edition. I'm already in. It's got beautiful spread edges. Just take my money, and they did. And the other one is Medusa by Rosie Hewlett, and this is the second book in her Greek series. I already have the first one, Medea, on there, but that's a pre-order too. It's special Waterstone special edition, spread edges. I need it on my shelf. And to make up the order so that I get free shipping, I added The Bones of Our House by Christine Folan, and this one has been on my TBR because the first book I read of hers was an arc called The Queen is Dead, which you can also find the video linked in the description, because that is a retelling of the history side of the character of Lady Macbeth, because she was a real character in history, she was a real person. And this dives more into that than the Shakespearean reimagining. I really think people should check it out. And so endeth my book buying for January. Thank God. So let's have a look at some numbers, because this thing likes numbers. So my top genre for January was fantasy. My total pages read was 2,044, and I averaged 66 pages a day. It's not bad going. I read 3 physical books, 3 digital books, and I started 2 series, I completed none, and I didn't continue any. I just started more series. Such a problem, I know. But my book of the month. What was my book of the month? As if I need to ask myself, and I really don't. Because my book of the month, you can see on there, is Venomborn by Benjamin Averin, because it's just perfect in every way. Now, what do I want to read in February? I have more to read in February, more than I was planning to. Because Faithbreaker by Hannah Kaner, the last in the trilogy, in the Fallen Gods trilogy, is coming out in March, and I have just booked tickets to go to a book signing in York in March. I can't wait. But it does mean that I should really read the series that I've got, which is Godkiller and Sunbringer, in February, before the other one comes out in March. So they're on my TBR. Monster of the Dagger Mountains by Meredith Hart is on my TBR. That's an arc I signed up for. I have committed the sin of breaking one of my resolutions already, and that being, please don't sign up for so many arcs. I signed up for so many, forgetting. I didn't really forget the ones I'd signed up for, but I didn't really think I'd get them. And I ended up getting all of them. And I really should learn my lesson by now. Another one is, I'm reading Watermoon at the minute, which was the Illumicrate January book. I'm going to partake in the Living Legend Butterfly Club read-along, because that was their book in January. And I want to read Sea of Souls, which is the first one, and Mists of Memory, which is the second one, which there were 2 that I wasn't counting on for this month. If I get to them, I want to read Fire Within by Morten Simonsen, which I found the author, it came up on my FYP on TikTok, and the book sounds incredibly interesting, so that's possible for this month, but it might move into March. Now, because it's the month of romance, I wanted to read the second in the Myths of Aaron series, which is up there, called A Cursed Heart by Jenny Hickman. I don't know whether I'm going to get to it, because of the other ones that are taking a higher priority. And I wanted to actually start A Court of Thorns and Roses. But that one is going to be a vlog, because as with some of my videos, my face tells a story better than my mouth can. And I have a feeling, I know the story, you can't escape spoilers for it, I already know where it goes. But the initial reactions to it, I think, are going to be quite amusing for you to watch and me to experience. So that was my plan with that, but it might move into a few months down the line. It simply depends on how long the other books take me. If I start a series and I don't like it, then I'm not going to continue with it. But that was my wrap up for January and my TBR for February. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Are these any books that you have read or that you want to read? Tell me your opinion of them, but remember, no spoilers. So, have a very good month and keep reading.
Soft embrace, dark star sips with calm and grace. Wine flows like whispers, secrets told, in the night where dreams unfold. Lonely shadows dance with glee, eyes of amber, soul set free. Finds they weave a tale so grand, woven